Yo, once again, welcome back to another episode of Dub and Trey. Today, we're going to bring a little fun show to y'all about bourbon, tequila, and cigars. Why are we going to talk about bourbon, tequila, and cigars? Because those are three things that both me and Trey enjoy doing in our spare time.
Damn right. There go that bell.
If you listen to the first episode we did, the What's Up episode, what was it, the first or the second episode, Trey? I think the second episode we brought the liquor bell in.
I think we brought the liquor bell on the second episode.
Okay, so if you guys listen to the second episode, you should know what that bell means. That means we both sipping something, which is only right if we're gonna talk about bourbon and tequila.
That's right.
Right. All right. So we're gonna start this thing off, and we're not gonna get too deep into the weeds of like what makes bourbon, what they do to make it and all that other stuff. It's a real quick hit for the fellas and the ladies. Y'all can listen to, because we know y'all love your bourbon and your tequila and cigars as well.
That's right.
But this is just to hip y'all and educate y'all a little bit on these three things, because these are things that we enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Right. So let's start with bourbon. If you don't know, bourbon is a whiskey. There are other whiskeys. Scotch is a whiskey. Bourbon and Scotch are just two different types of whiskeys, but we're going to talk about bourbon. All right, what makes bourbon bourbon? Bourbon has to be made by at least 51% corn. Now, bourbon can be made, whiskey can be made by various ingredients that makes up the mash that makes the bourbon. For a whiskey to be called a bourbon, it has to contain at least 51% corn, right? And it has to be distilled in the United States. Just a little bit of education. If there's a whiskey that's distilled outside the United States, it's known as a whiskey, but it will be not labeled a bourbon.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And a little fun fact, over 90% of the bourbon in the world that is labeled bourbon comes from Kentucky.
Over 90%?
Over 90%.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. With that being said, let's talk about how you taste bourbon. Just to let y'all know how you should, the best way to appreciate what the beverage has to offer you. So first starts with the glass. There's a particular glass that looks like a tulip. It's called a Glencairn glass. It's a little wide at the bottom, and then it narrows up towards the top, again like a tulip. What this glass does is it helps the aromas from the bourbon get to your palate, to your nose, and it also keeps you from smelling or experiencing the alcohol level in the bourbon, as far as the proof and all that, right? So the first thing you want to do, pour you a nice bourbon neat, and you want to look at it, right? Some bourbons are lighter, some bourbons are darker, and that means something. I'll leave it there. I'll let you do your research so you can find out what it means when a bourbon is a little more see-through on the lighter end versus the bourbons that are a little darker. That kind of leads to the other ingredients in it besides the corn. Next thing you want to do, you want to smell it. Put your glass up to your nose and smell the bourbon and realize what you smell, right? You might smell some aromatics. You might smell vanilla. You might smell caramel. You might smell honey. You might smell cinnamon. There's just various things that you may smell from the bourbon. And again, that's just akin to the other ingredients that it's distilled with in the mash. Of course, next, the thing we all wait for is the taste. So you want to take a small sip of it, swirl it around in your mouth, make sure it swirls over your tongue, all the different parts of your tongue, and really taste the bourbon. Again, see what you taste. You know what I mean? All those notes I talked about, you may be able to taste those things. And then afterwards, you have the finish, which is the aftertaste. Because some bourbons, you don't taste certain things till after you've swallowed it. Then the next step is, after you've done that, take a couple drops of water, drop that in your glass, and then start all over again. Now you do that because for some really weird reason, water changes bourbon. It changes the smells, it changes the taste. So add you a couple drops of water to the bourbon and do it all over again. And that's your bourbon, man. Depending on what it's distilled with or what it's mixed with, you can get the notes like I already stated. You can also get notes of like pepper, nutmeg, clove, tobacco. I mean, there's so many different flavor profiles in bourbons, and it's all based on how long it's distilled and what it's distilled with.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Based on what you said, so it sounds like you can make your experience, if you really try to look for those notes, it can become sort of like a hobby or experience where let's see if I can really taste these notes. Let's see if I can really taste it. And everybody's taste buds are different, right? So if I drink it, I may taste something different than what you taste. And I guess that could be the beauty of it when you're looking for those notes that you see in the description of the bourbon. So with that being said, the question I have is, what are some of your top bourbons? What are some of the good bourbons? What are some of the ones that you would suggest people to try?
Right. So some of my favorite bourbons, my probably number one is Angel's Envy Rye. And this is my favorite bourbon because it is almost like candy in a bottle. That's how I can describe it.
Wow.
It's very sweet, like caramel, maple, raisins. Like you taste raisins and fruits and plums. And y'all might think I'm full of it right now, but I'm telling you.
And what's the name of it again? Shout it out again.
Angel's Envy Rye.
Angel's Envy Rye.
You got it. That is my favorite bourbon. Some other ones I like is Booker's. Booker's is a little hard to find because they only release certain amounts of particular releases of bourbon. And there's no one release like the other. So if you buy Booker's twice a year, those two bottles are going to taste different and have different notes in it because they change their mashes and their ingredients regularly. And they do that on purpose just to provide you different experiences with the bourbon.
Okay.
So Angel's Envy Rye, Booker's, Noah's Mill, and I like Uncle Nearest 1884, which is very easily found.
Yeah,
I
heard of that.
And one of the other reasons I like bourbon is because for most bourbons, there's a story behind a lot of bourbons. As far as who made it, where it came from. And the Uncle Nearest, for me, I don't know if it's more about the alcohol, it's more about the story, right? And the story behind Uncle Nearest is he was actually a slave. His name is Nathan Green, right? And as a slave, he distilled whiskey, and he was so good at it that like neighboring states knew about his whiskey. And on the plantation he was owned by, when he became a free man, he actually stayed at the plantation freely to continue distilling his whiskey.
Wow.
And the plantation was named Dan Call, Dan Call Farm, I think. And it's in Tennessee, or was in Tennessee. So it's a Tennessee whiskey, right? As he got older, he taught a young man by the name of Jack Daniels how to distill whiskey. Who we all know as Jack Daniels. So the secret behind Jack Daniels whiskey is a slave who people called Uncle Nearest that taught him how to distill the same whiskey that he was known for distilling.
Wow.
So now he has I don't know how that works out, or if the family gets anything from it, or whatever. But yeah, Uncle Nearest 1884.
That's some moving history there, man. That make me want to go get a bottle of that. Just to have, just to sip on and on a regular basis, because that story is the story of Black America and where we come from, our ancestors and that kind of thing. So that's dope. That's definitely
absolutely dope. And there's so many bourbons with those kind of stories behind them. So I tell you all, if you have a bourbon you like, Google it, look it up, and see if there's some history behind where it came from or who made it and things like that. It just, those little things can make you appreciate what you're drinking a little bit more.
Yeah, that's
right.
What's up.
Now moving on from bourbon, something a little bit more very different, but still a excellent choice to drink. Yeah. We're gonna go to tequila, right?
Yeah. So definitely appreciate you, Dub, on educating me on that bourbon, because I didn't know I'm gonna say about 90% of that you explained. So definitely appreciate you educating me on that.
Right.
So for tequila, I really want to talk to the audience and break down what tequila is originally, and then go into some things where, when it comes to making cocktails, how you make some suggestions, some things that I've done, and some things that I've learned throughout time drinking tequila. So the first thing I want to do is break down where tequila comes from and the types of tequila. So tequila comes from an agave plant, and typically this blue agave is cooked from the agave plant. Good tequila is 100% agave. A lot of times you may find out that people get sick, or people may say they don't like to drink certain types of tequila because they're not drinking the purest form of 100% agave tequila. So so let's break down some of the top 4 types of tequila. There are many types of tequilas out there, but the most common, the most that people know, is first the purest form, which is silver, tequila silver. Most people call it blanco. That is not aged and it's clear. It's a pure, as soon as it comes from the plant and it's distilled, you have blanco. The next level would be reposado. Reposado is aged for 2 months to a year. It's going to be aged in oak barrels, and you're going to have, this is going to bring out a little bit more flavor. So those type of tequilas would give you a little bit more flavor. And this is where I would say you might want to even add those reposados to your mixed margaritas. Most of the time when you have a margarita, most places, restaurants, clubs, lounges, they're going to give you a blanco with that margarita. But I like to switch it into and get a reposado because it's going to be more flavorful. And then if you want to even take it a step further, you can get a Cadillac margarita where they add the Grand Marnier to it. This is the best taste of margarita, in my opinion, if you're going to drink margarita. So definitely good. And it's also a good sipper if you want to sip on something. If you're not really a whiskey guy, or if you are a whiskey guy and you want to get into tequila, sipping on a reposado, it would be a good start on the rocks. And you can taste those flavors because it still has some of those same processes when you talk about being aged in barrels for certain amounts of time. So that's good for the reposados. So then you have the añejos. Añejos are aged from 1 year and older. So after at least 1 year, the tequila is aged in that oak barrel. A lot of bourbons and a lot of whiskeys do the same, depending on what type of brand you do. So the añejos, you definitely don't want to put in a cocktail. This is something that you definitely want to sip on the rocks. I would suggest that you do the same thing that Dub just expressed when he talked about bourbon, when he talked about trying to identify the flavors in the bourbon. This is the same thing you want to do with your añejos. And then the fourth one would be the extra añejo. Now, the extra añejo in this area, in most areas, especially in urban America, in our culture, most popular, Don Julio, 1942, Avion, 1944. These are your extra añejos. Extra añejos have to be aged 3 years or more. So once these are 3 years or more, it can be considered an extra añejo. These are very smooth. They are very flavorful. And once again, this is something that you don't want to shoot. This is something that you don't want to mix in the cocktail. So I think a lot of people out there need to be educated on how to drink more so than how to drink and to identify what they're actually drinking. Sometimes you hear people say, well, I don't drink tequila. Well, if you don't drink tequila, tell me what type of tequila you don't drink. Oh, I don't drink none of it. Well, I think you need to understand the different levels and understand what they are before you can say you don't like tequila. There are different levels. And I used to be the same way. I used to think, hey man, I can't stand Patron. But then I realized, is it Patron I can't stand, or is it Blanco? Is it the silver? And it was the silver. It just, I didn't care for I would prefer something aged and more flavorful. The silver wasn't my cup of tea, and some people prefer silver, So my advice out there for people is to definitely get educated on what you're drinking and understand the education behind how it's made. Just like Doug explained about the bourbon, understanding that process will help you identify how you want to have your drink. So those are the four. You got the silver, reposado, añejo, and you got the extra añejo. So I'm gonna keep it as simple as that. You can get into a lot of other variations of it. You can get into a lot of different things, but those are the core basis of tequila. Right. And they come from that plant.
And the funny thing you said about the tequila is people need to know how to drink. Because I was one of those people, is when someone would say tequila, I thought Patron, 1800, something you put in a shot glass and you just boom, take it to the head.
Right.
That's probably the majority of people's experience with tequila. Mm-hmm. Quick shot, take it to the head, and that's it.
Right.
You know, the majority, and I don't know this for a fact, but I can say that in our culture,
yes,
right, I think most people see tequila as birthday shots, celebration shots, or just shots in general. Very few people see it as the sipping beverage.
Exactly, and it breaks my heart to see people taking shots of 1942. It really does. I really want to tell the audience out there, if you are some ladies out there, some gentlemen out there, and you in the club or you at the bar and you taking shots of 1942, shame on you. The process and the amount of time that it took to make this particular beverage, and you have the audacity to just drink it like it's a regular Blanco. You can't even appreciate the flavor.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You can't even appreciate it.
You're throwing your money away. You're talking about $40 a shot. You know, you're talking about, if you're in the club, you're talking about a, $300 bottle and up, and you just taking shots. You're not even sipping it. You're not enjoying it. So you might as well just buy a bottle of silver, of whatever brand you like, the Casamigos, the 1800, the Avion.
Because you're not drinking to taste it. You're not drinking it just to drink it.
If you're not drinking tequila to taste the tequila, just get a silver.
Right.
That's it. It's really that simple. And just buy a silver tequila. If you're not drinking to taste it, because that's what reposados and añejos and extra añejo, they're aging this so you can taste it, so you can taste the flavor to it. I definitely think people should get educated on it. It's great knowledge to have when you are in the environment, because you know how you want your drinks made. And that's a lot of problem. People think they can just order anything, and people will give you anything, and then you wonder why you got a hangover. Then you wonder why you're sick. So do some research on your tequilas. Some of the tequilas I like, of course, George Clooney's, Casamigos. Everybody knows about it in this area, in this culture. Reposados, the añejo, can't go wrong with it. Smooth, tastes good, so you can't go wrong with that. Of course, 1942 Don Julio. All Don Julio products, of course, are very popular and are very good. But again, do your research. Definitely try the 1944 Avion. I prefer that over the Don Julio 1942. I think it has a little more flavor to it. I can kind of taste the vanilla a little better in the 1944. If you haven't tasted the Avion 1944, definitely taste it. And of course, Clase Azul, man, Reposado, the most flavorful out of all the tequilas that I've had.
Sir. Where's that bell? There's that bell.
There's that bell. If you guys didn't know what we were hitting, some people said, get a new bell. And I say, well, it's not really a bell. It's the bottle of the Clase Azul.
Yes, sir.
Reposado. So definitely, ladies, if you want to buy your man a nice gift, these are some of the gifts that men love. 1944, 1942, Clase Azul, Reposados, añejo, a nice añejo for him to sip, and educate him, because brothers don't know either. It's not just the ladies. Brothers don't. Tell them, look, Trey and Dove said, "Sip this. You don't take shots of this.
Don't take shots of this.
We sip this after some dinner together. Don't shoot this. We're gonna sip this together with a good cigar. You know."
Absolutely. I didn't know about tequila, but I did a little research myself.
Okay,
right.
Let's do it.
So
educate me.
I got 2 things that I found that I didn't know that I'm gonna share with you and the audience.
Cool.
Like bourbon is a whiskey, and Scotch is a whiskey, right? But bourbon and Scotch are just 2 different kinds of whiskeys, right? Tequila is what's called a mezcal.
Mezcal, right.
Tequila is a mezcal, but not all mezcal is tequila.
That's right. Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Now, for it to be a tequila, just like bourbon has to have at a minimum 51% corn as the makeup, tequila has to have at least 51% blue agave as the makeup
to be called
for it to be labeled as a tequila. If it doesn't have blue agave in it, it is a mezcal. It is not a tequila.
And that's critical to know, because
that's very critical.
It's very critical to know, because a lot of bars and a lot of clubs will not give you a tequila. They give you a mezcal.
A mezcal. That's right. That's right. So you got to know what you're paying for, and you got to know what you're drinking.
Ladies, gentlemen, always ask what type of tequila is in the margarita. That's a critical question, especially after you've done your research. You know, you say, "Oh no, I'm paying for a $20 drink," and you putting in, you know, a real cheap tequila.
Yeah.
That's quote unquote not even a tequila.
That's not even a tequila.
That's not even a tequila.
That's right.
But yet you getting charged a premium price, but you don't have premium alcohol in the drink.
That's right.
If I'm gonna be charged a premium price, I want to be drinking premium alcohol.
100%.
So that's great information. Yes.
Yeah, man. And I've been rocking with that De Leon.
Oh yeah, the De Leon. Yeah. That's some good stuff, man.
Yeah, I've been feeling that. And then the other tequila I really enjoyed, me and you had, was the Comos. I think it was called, right?
I have that. Yes, that's
Komos.
OS. Yes. Yeah, I like them too.
That tequila was delicious.
Yeah. I definitely agree. So definitely, people, get out there and try it. Get out there and look for some good tequilas out there. You don't have to get the high end and the most expensive, and some of the stuff there. If you go down that tequila aisle, it's a lot of tequila from Mexico that is just as good, that you can find at a reasonable price. So definitely do your research.
And that's a great point. And that point also can be made for bourbon.
Right.
Because that's one of the things that I enjoyed about discovering bourbon is that the price point doesn't necessarily match the taste and the quality.
Right.
Whereas with scotches, to have a good scotch, you're going to have to pay for a good scotch. There's no such thing as a good cheap scotch. Right. But with bourbons, you can find a really good bourbon at like a $30 to $40 price point for the bottle.
Right. Same thing with tequila. You can find a good bottle of tequila for $30.
Yep.
You just do your research. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of these houses, they're using the same plants from the same farm. You know, they're just processing it in different ways.
Right.
But the quality is still the same. The process is different, and the outcome is different. The tequila tastes different.
Right.
But the quality of the tequila is still the same. So yeah, definitely do your research on that. Tonight I'm sipping on Avion 44.
Nice.
You know,
nice.
The extra añejo. But I still got that bell. So one thing you can do with your bourbon, one thing you can do with your tequila is smoke a good cigar with it.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's where we're about to go next. A good cigar.
That's where we're going next.
A good cigar. So to start from the beginning, to educate you guys about cigars, the shapes, the sizes of cigars, those are called the vitolas. Just so you know what those are. And cigars come in a number of shapes and sizes, right? But that is called the vitola of the cigar. You know, its shape and its size. Again, just like the bourbon and tequila, a little background, but not too deep. You know, we prefer you guys do your own research, and you can go as deep as you want to go. Because if we went all super deep in bourbon, tequilas, and cigars, we'll be here for 3 days. You know, because
at least
because these three things are staples. You know, bourbon is an American staple. Tequila is a Mexican staple. Cigars is a world staple, right? So these things have history, and they have certain things behind them that we just don't have the time to dig into, right?
Right.
So
don't send us no emails trying to be politically correct.
Right.
Talking about, well, technically speaking.
Right. So the tobacco and the cigars, they're whole leaf tobacco, right? For a little background. And the tobacco can come from many different places. Tobacco grows in Africa. It grows in Brazil, Ecuador, the Dominican Republic, France, Indonesia, Maryland, Virginia, Mexico, Nicaragua, Cuba. I mean, tobacco grows all over the world. Mm-hmm. Now, what changes the flavor of the leaf is the soil and the temperature from the region it's growing in. That's what gives the tobacco its personality, so to speak. That's why for some time, Cuban cigars were so highly regarded and still are kind of highly regarded because the soil and the temperature in Cuba just produce a very, very flavorful tobacco leaf, right? And that's still sort of the case. I mean, Cuba doesn't have the market on producing premium cigars like they used to because, you know, Ecuadorian cigars and all the other ones I named are just, you know, quality cigars now. So just because you're not smoking a Cuban cigar, it doesn't mean you're not smoking a premium cigar. And just because you are smoking a Cuban cigar, it doesn't mean you are smoking a premium cigar.
And years ago, that was the perception. That was the perception.
And I'll tell you guys, if you meet anyone who says they smoke cigars and they say I smoke Cubans, they don't know anything about cigars.
Right. Yeah.
You know, anyone who calls out their cigars by the region, no one says you smoke cigars. You say, yeah, I smoke Ecuadorians. No one says that. Right. So they're pretending to be an aficionado, which is a person who knows a good amount about cigars. They're pretending to be that person.
Man, who said we're not educated on
here?
Man, you better stop playing with me, man. You better stop playing with me.
Now, get into how you smoke your cigar, right? So if you go, I'm a start from you going into the store, picking out a cigar all the way to lighting it, right? So first of all, know what you expect from a cigar. If you've never smoked a cigar before, tell the person that's helping you that you've never had a cigar before and you want something light. You want something sweet. You want something, just be honest. You know, and for my fellas, don't be ashamed of smoking a flavorful or sweet cigar. If you never had, you know what I mean? If you never had a cigar before, don't walk into the humidor and tell a guy, oh, just give me your best cigar, because he's probably going to give you something that's way too strong for you to appreciate.
Full body.
Yes, sir.
And you're going to have a bad night.
Yes, sir.
I can promise you're going to have a bad night.
Absolutely. So pick your cigar wisely. All right, that's the first thing. Once you have your cigar, you take the wrapper off or whatever, or what have you, smell it. No, just like with your bourbon and your tequila, smell your cigar. See what flavors you have. And in the tobacco, you will smell certain things. You will smell, you know, pepper, spice. Honestly, many of the things that are in bourbons and you might catch in tequilas because it comes from the earth, right?
Right.
Now, cutting your cigar, on the closed in a cigar, there's a cap. If you look at the cap, you'll see lines around it, right? That's the cap. You want to take your cutter, you want to put it to the most inner, as close to the most inner line of your cap as you can, and do a very quick cut, right? Don't try to baby it, just cut it so that it's a nice, quick, clean cut. That's cutting your cigar. There are different various cutters, straight cutters, V cutters. It doesn't matter, it's all the same. Lighting your cigar, whether you have a torch or a match, you want to hold this cigar to the tip of your light. You don't want to put the cigar in the fire. You want to put it at the tip of the fire and rotate it as you're bringing in the smoke, and you want to rotate it like you're roasting a marshmallow, so to speak.
Right.
Once it's lit, you just enjoy the cigar. You know, take a bringing the smoke into your mouth, taste it, and exhale, right? Now, for those of you that have the ability to exhale smoke out of your nose, you're going to pick up far more flavors from doing it that way than just exhaling it out of your mouth. For some really weird reason, your nose is going to pick up a lot of flavors that your tongue is going to miss. And that's the gist of cigars. That's as deep as I'm going to go with cigars because it's a lot to it.
Right.
Into growing the tobacco and the soil and the seeds that come from one region but it's grown in another region. It's so much that goes into cigars. What I will tell you is that Cuban cigars are not always the best cigars. So don't fall for that.
Right.
And the value in cigars is finding a cigar that you love that doesn't break the bank. If you can find a cigar that you love to smoke for $2, you should be a very happy person because that's the goal.
Right.
The quality and the price.
Right. Reasonable price for a good quality.
Some of the ones I like to enjoy, I'll give you guys the blenders or the companies that I like the cigars from. So I like Padrones. I like Punch. Punch makes some really good cigars. Crowned Heads is another one that I like a good amount of their cigars. Aganorsa makes great cigars. Fuente is like a staple in the cigar business. They make obviously great cigars. If you ever heard of the Fuente Shark or Forbidden X, Fuente is like heavy. Kings in the cigar business, right? And Bombay makes great cigars. And if you guys are looking for a really, really good quality to price cigar, there's a gentleman who makes cigars by the name of JNV. JNV. That's the name of the cigar company. The gentleman who owns it, you will speak directly to him or deal with him when you order the cigars. They have wow. Right? So that is a great bang for buck cigar company, JNV.
Got it.
Now for Cubans, my favorite Cuban cigars are Diplomaticos and Bolivars. Most people, when you say Cuban cigars, they think Cohiba. Most people, who don't really know too much about cigar, and that's fine. But there's so many other Cuban cigar makers that, to me, are better than Cohibas. And again, just take your time. If you never had a cigar before, don't act like it. That's one thing I could tell you about the cigar community is that we are always willing to educate and help you. If you don't know how to cut it, if you don't know how to light it, if you don't know anything about it, but you're interested in it, just go in a cigar shop and ask someone, and they will be happy to help you.
Happy to help you.
But don't go in there and waste your money pretending you know what you're doing because you don't like to ask for help.
That's a key point right there. Good point.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Don't be an ego person because then you just end up looking stupid
and sick.
Very sick.
Yeah,
very sick.
Great points, Dub. I got a few. The Drew Estate cigars, I love those. Very flavorful. Some leather rolls.
That's a great one.
Bottom Betty's. There's another cigar, El Rey do Mundo's. Very smooth, very even burn. I look for cigars. I'm not a specialist of any type when it comes to cigars, but I do know the ones that I enjoy to smoke. And that's the most important thing. So
it is.
My El Rey do Mundo's, I love them. They're very smooth. I do a mellow to medium cigar, and understanding that measurement, what that means when you get in a mellow cigar versus a medium versus a full. When you don't really know and you're just getting into cigars, you need to understand what that means.
Absolutely.
So you definitely, if you're starting off, like Dub mentioned before, you want to stay away from those full body cigars until you figured out what you're used to and what you like. And then if you want to try expand, then you move up the ladder to some of those experts like Dub. So I'm gonna stay where I'm at. I'm good where I'm at.
and just the key for you guys. So one thing that me and Trey both mentioned is about getting sick. So if you get a cigar that's too strong, or maybe you're smoking it too fast and you get a little nicotine sickness, right? What you need is sugar. Sugar fixes that. So anything sweet, especially chocolate, will fix that. So if you keep candy in your pocket or just something sweet, it fixes that sickness that you feel if you happen to have a full body cigar and it's kind of getting to you a little bit. So that's just a tip trick that you can do. Yeah.
I think people should also be mindful that I think some people who do smoke cigars, they forget that they're actually having alcohol too, because 9 times out of 10 they are. They're forgetting about the addition of alcohol and addition of you actually smoking tobacco and mixing it with alcohol.
Yeah, good point.
And not really doing what you're supposed to do when it comes to drinking alcohol. By the way, we talked about bourbon, we talked about tequila. Some things that you need to do in between drinking your bourbon and your tequila is have glasses of water.
That's right.
So you can hydrate your body so your body can bounce back. So understand that you need to have a balance of whatever it is that you're doing, that you enjoy, whatever it is, whatever your vice is that you enjoy. If you like to drink a particular type of bourbon, or if you like to drink a particular type of tequila, don't just go and drink 6-7 glasses of tequila and not have any water. Right. Same thing with when you're smoking a cigar. Understand what you're smoking. Like Dove said, you can counter any of those things with sugar if you think you're being affected by the tobacco or the nicotine.
Right.
And also drink water, especially if you're drinking alcohol while you're smoking a cigar. So I would suggest if you've never smoked a cigar before, and if you're not that well versed in cigars, I would suggest not to drink when you're smoking your first cigar.
Right.
I would suggest you just smoke your cigar. If you want to have a drink afterwards, if based on how you feel, go ahead and do it. But I would suggest that you don't do both, because you haven't had that experience on measuring what your tolerance is. Mm-hmm. So that can be a very bad night for you.
Yeah, it can. And as a cigar smoker, to be honest with you, the only time I'll ever smoke a cigar with alcohol is if I'm out. But if I'm home, my two drinks of choice with cigars is either coffee, black coffee, or water. And the reason I choose either one of those is because I taste the flavors in the cigar better. Because depending on the alcohol you drink and the cigar you're smoking, one is going to cancel the other out.
That's right.
So if you have a really strong alcohol or really flavorful alcohol and the cigar you're having is a mild cigar, you're not going to taste any flavors in that cigar, because your palate is being overpowered by the alcohol, right? So that kind of goes in a pairing, and that, just to touch on that, that's kind of how you want to pair. If you do choose to drink alcohol and smoke a cigar, you kind of want to pair them up in that manner, right? If you're smoking a light cigar, then you want a light alcohol, and by light I don't mean color. I mean, like if you get a bourbon, maybe add some ice to it to take some of the harshness away from it, right? If you have a tequila, maybe add some ice to it, or have it neat, right? If you're smoking a full body cigar, then it may be okay to drink that higher proof bourbon, because they may kind of go together.
Great point.
If you guys got any specific questions about tequila, bourbons, or cigars, man, definitely hit us up. We'll be happy to answer your specific questions. But like I said, I don't think either of us wanted to get too deep into this episode, because it would have been a really long and crazy episode talking about bourbon, tequila, and cigars, because there's a lot to it.
Yeah, and this is just the first part. I think we can go into specific types of bourbons and have a show on a particular bourbon and the history of it, because Dub touched on a great story. And also taking the show into touching on certain types of tequilas, talking about specifically maybe just añejos or maybe just reposados.
Right. We can talk about pairings as well the next
pairings
episode.
As well, right. And going a little deeper. But we just wanted to do something to introduce these things to certain people and to educate people on what they actually are and to understand the process behind it. So definitely go out there, drink responsibly, and smoke responsibly.
Absolutely. And we out.
We out.